Welcome to Paddle Forward, the podcast where we navigate the currents of life, embracing motherhood, mindfulness, and the pursuit of our dreams. I'm your host, Anacani Walters, and I'm thrilled to embark on this journey with you. In each episode, I'll dive into insightful conversations, share inspiring stories, and explore practical strategies to help you unleash your creativity, find happiness within yourself, and navigate the beautiful but sometimes challenging waters of life. Whether you're a new mom seeking balance, a dreamer in pursuit of your passion, or simply someone looking to live a more meaningful and mindful life, this podcast is for you. Together, we'll paddle forward, embracing the waves of change and discover the extraordinary possibilities that lie ahead. So grab your metaphorical paddle, grab your favorite oil, inhale the peace, exhale the chaos, and let's dive into today's episode. Okay, welcome back to Paddle Forward. Navigating the currents of life. I'm your host, Anacani Walters, and we're diving into something that's super, super personal and close to my heart. Sorry, I look like I'm super distracted, but uh, I'm a mama, and my son is on the verge of waking up, and I'm trying to do this. I was like doing all this stuff, trying to redo my intro. I'm not the most tech confident person or whatever you would call it. And so I've just been struggling trying to figure out an easy way to put my podcast intro to these videos. And I was like, I'm running out of time. I need to record the podcast for this week. So, anyways, um, the topic that I wanted to go through today is essentially my journey to motherhood at 40 and this concept of matrescence. If you've never heard of it, it's a beautiful, beautiful word. And I want to just start to really educate people on it. So if your mom, especially if you're over 35, or you're on your way to becoming a mother, meaning you're pregnant at the moment and you're over 35, then this podcast episode is for you, my friend. So I want to start from the very beginning. And so some of you may or may not know this story, but um, my husband and I, we've known each other for a really long time and actually didn't get married. A lot of people just assume because he and I are both older. I'm 43. He's going to be 50 actually next year. He just turned 49 this year. And they just assume that I think we have been married for a really long time. We actually just got married in 2018, right before we moved to Japan because he got orders. And so we are a military family. And so we got married kind of shotgun style. He was deployed. He literally got back. I had 45 days to plan the wedding. We got married and then he deployed again. And then when he got back, we moved to overseas to Japan like 45 days later. It was crazy. But we had started to talk about trying to get pregnant right after we moved. He was just starting to think about his age. He has already had two children prior to us being together. And so, but he knew that I kind of was starting to have this feeling that I wanted to try. And so he's like, he kept bringing it up like, if we're going to do this, we need to do it soon. We kind of were not we didn't kind of try. We were trying for about almost 3 years, but things were complicated because I was on two heart medications. One of them that I desperately needed to basically come off of, but it was COVID. The military doctors were kind of at a loss. We were short staffed. People didn't really know how to handle me. Nobody really knew. Um, Nobody wanted to take responsibility for me. And so time just kept ticking. I was like going from doctor to doctor, referral to referral. Nobody everybody just kept telling me the same thing. Like, you're a little too old, you're high risk. You should just give up the idea and just start looking into adoption. Um, and every time I would go to a new specialist and they're like, we don't see you until this, you're going to have to go back. I don't know why you got referred to us. It was like just kind of this heartbreak internally of like one step like further away from, it ever happening. And long story short, 2.5 years later, a lot of research, a lot of work, a lot of just organizing and things. Um, I just was starting to like, I had already given myself the deadline. At 40, I was going to just go ahead and just stop trying. And we had both agreed to that. And I felt really good with the decision, like being at peace that, like, if it didn't happen, then I was just going to take it as like, God was letting me know it just wasn't in my card to be that type of mom. And I was already like starting to just try to embrace and be better about being a bonus mom because my husband had two children, both very much thriving adults, meaning that, they're not very into hanging out with us or, doing anything because they're living their best life. And so it still kind of just left me with like this feeling of like I still wanted to have that opportunity to take somebody from like infancy to adulthood. But I was making peace with it. My business was actually starting to pick up. I was like really getting into it. I was doing all kinds of stuff, thriving. And I don't know, I can't really speak for my husband, but in my mind, I kind of already let go of the idea. I was making peace with the idea that it wasn't going to be in my cards. I had moments where, I was like, you waited too long and things like that. But I tried to not like reflect on the negative and more of the positive. I was like, yeah, you know what? They're right. Adoption, there's plenty of kids out there that need good homes. And we decided that once he retired out of the military, we would look into it because we didn't really want to bring somebody out of the foster system into a military like lifestyle because it can be kind of hectic when you have to move every 2 years. We really thought that whoever we ended up adopting really needed stability. So, um, one ordinary day, I took a pregnancy test. I don't really remember too great, like in detail, what made me like think to do it. I had some pregnancy tests. I just never had actually needed to use it. I had PCOS, so when I did come off of birth control, I just had massive amount of bleeding and irregular periods. I was pretty much bleeding, like menstruating constantly, which is why I was on birth control for so long. And there was just all these factors. And so I just took a pregnancy test because I was like, I haven't had a period in a little bit and not really thinking anything of it. And the pregnancy test that I just, peed on, first time I had ever done it, turned positive. But in my mind, I was like, oh, it's negative. I think I need one line. Two lines means that it's negative. So I read the box and then I read it and was like, oh shit, it's positive. And I had this sinking, like pain, gut feeling, like in my stomach when I realized that I was pregnant. And I got so freaked out, I literally took the pregnancy test and the box, shoved it back in there, and threw it underneath the bathroom sink and like went about my day. I was cleaning the house and like I was freaked out. Like I was sweating, my heart rate was racing. And like I tried to ignore it. I was like, nope, I did not just see that. And I remember periodically after that, I would like go back to the sink and to look at it just to say, like, dude, you may be like delusional. And then I would look and I was like, nope, it's still positive. And I'd put it back and then I just like was like, oh my God. So later I was like, I need to just like have, like, this isn't reliable. I need to know like 100% for sure. So I went to the doctor's, made an appointment. They did a pregnancy test at the clinic. And I remember the nurse coming out and she was like super excited, really, really young. And she's like, oh my God, Mrs. Walters, yes, you are pregnant. And then she like really changed her like personality and the way she was talking to me as soon as she like saw my reaction. I don't like sometimes when things like I'm not happy about them or I don't like a person, I can't hide it. Sometimes I can, but a lot of the times I can't. And I just remember like staring at her like this feeling like I could feel flushed. I might have looked like I was going to pass out. I don't know like what she saw, but clearly I was not hiding that I was like in shock. And so she's like, um, do you need to sit down? Is this not good news? And I said, no, no, like, it is. It's just, I just need a minute. We've been trying for like 3 years and I just didn't think that this was going to happen. And I'm just kind of freaking out a little bit. And so she's like, okay, okay. And so like I kind of gave her like a little backstory. And then she's like, oh my God, I just got goosebumps. And to me, it was like, oh, I love your like sentimented like empathy right now, but it's like not what I need right now. Um and so in my mind, I just like, oh shit, like what did I just do? And there was just a lot of overwhelm and anxiety as I was there sitting and she's like talking to me, but it really is that moment where like as a nurse, like they tell you repeat everything to the patients 3 times because especially because I was in surgical oncology. So they were getting cancer diagnosis and they're like, I spent most of my nursing career reiterating exactly what was being told in that diagnosis um, consultation appointment because they literally all they heard was you have cancer. And so they would call later and be like, I don't remember what I'm supposed to do. Like, I was just so overwhelmed by the cancer diagnosis. And, like, literally, that's all I was doing is like repeating verbatim what, like, okay, so this is what it is. This is what you need to do next. I've already scheduled this. La, la, la. We're waiting for this, whatever it is. And I was like, oh my God, this is me. Like, I don't remember nothing that this chick said. All I remember was just like thinking, I'm pregnant. Like, my gosh, like literally, I'm about to be 40 in like 2 months. Like, oh, this is surreal. And I just had massive anxiety. It hit me really hard. And I was thinking, what if my husband isn't happy? Like, we haven't really talked about it. We just kind of were like, whatever happens, happens. And I was like, what about my business? Like, it's starting to thrive. I'm about to have to like give it all up. It's finally taking off. And like all this doubt started to come in. Like, what was I thinking? Is this really what I wanted? I don't know anything about raising a baby. Like, what if I'm not a good mom? What if I start to repeat um, the mistakes that my parents made with raising, their kids? And I was like, oh my gosh. Um, I started to like get really overwhelmed. And I don't really get overwhelmed that easily. So it was like a lot of things coming at me all at once. And all these thoughts really started to consume me. And so, you know, I kind of wished that I had known that all the anxiety and the fears that I was experiencing, that there was a term for it. It's called matrescence. And I just thought I was like this awful person for not being like grateful and like, I don't know, celebratory with the news. Instead, I was like panicking and freaking out and having all these like negative thoughts. I ended up going to the beach that was right next to the clinic on base and I remember sitting at the beach and just shifting the sand and looking at the ocean and watching the waves crash down and just having all of these like crazy thoughts and like, like this is it. Like I never made success. I never really did anything with my life. I'm about to be a mom and this is it. Like this is where like best life, my best life is done and like, I don't even know if I have anything really to show for it. I know, and that's what it sounds awful saying that out loud, but to be honest, you'd be surprised how many people actually have that same feeling. And so I remember kind of just letting the sand shift through my hands and then thinking, like, I just stopped and there was like this one little bitty shell. And I was like, that's probably the size of the embryo at this point. And I just looked at it and thinking to myself, like, no matter what, like, I'm going to be the best mom that I can be for you, buddy. And I cried. I asked, you know, Kimanja, the goddess of the sea, to kind of just, bless me. And I went home and tried to figure out how to tell my husband. It took me like 3 days to get the courage to tell him. Every time I tried, it either seemed like he wasn't in a good mood or just was like a bad day. And then I would like panic and then I chickened out. And then finally I worked up the courage to do. I was like, you have to tell him like now. And so um he was really happy, FYI. Again, all in my mind. Um but legitimate. I think legitimate things that a lot of people think and feel, but we don't talk about it. And that's why I wanted to come on, um, to just kind of be this voice to people that it's okay, like to have these things. Society suppresses and makes us feel like we're awful people, to have these emotions, but it's actually something that's a real thing. So, matrescence is basically the process of becoming a motherhood. And you'll hear some people even call it when women give birth, they give birth to two people. And it really, that birthing of that second person happens the moment you find out that you're pregnant. You basically birth into a whole nother person. And so it's really this transformation that basically affects your mind, your body, and your spirit. And society really often overlooks this phase of womanhood. Um, and I feel like we're often celebrated for our achievements and things before motherhood, like our careers, our ambitions, our physical appearance, like our body. And then once we become mothers, then that support often fades. Like your mom and like, you know, like we have no excuses. Like if your body doesn't look the way it did before you got pregnant, you kind of gave up on yourself. If you're don't go back to work, or you're not working, you're a stay-at-home mom, you've lost your ambition and drive for like life. Or um it's just a lot. Like there's so many things that society kind of like looks down on us because we become mothers. And so then that becomes really toxic for women, because then we're felt to force like we have to go back to that person before we were mothers. And this affects whether you had a natural, like if you actually conceived a human or not. Like you could be a pet mama, you could be an adoption mama, you can be whatever kind of mama, a plant mama. Like you literally change. You become this different person, and so I find that it's really sad that society has really put women in this back seat, especially through motherhood. When we should support them the most, we actually support them the least. Um, and after you give birth, it's this pressure to try to go back. And it's like there's nothing in life where we can go backwards. So they reference matrescence like the phase of adolescence, when a child goes from a child into a teenager. And it's not like we can tell, like the teenager can be like, you know what, this isn't for me. This is fucking too hard. I'm done with this hormone and these, um, hair and smell and acne. I'm gonna go back to being a kid. Like, it's like that don't work. Like, you got to keep moving forward. You got to keep paddling forward. Well, the same thing happens with motherhood. We cannot go back to the person that we were. It is irreversible. You can never go back to that person. Your body will never look the same. It will never feel the same. It will never be the same. But we make it seem like it's always going to be this awful thing. Like our best life was lived, and then the moment we get pregnant, like that's it. That's like the end game. Like, that's it. Like life is over. And it's like really sad that that's how women are forced to feel because society doesn't support us. And so it's just this reverting back to ourselves. And the thing is that we're trying to do it so quickly, um that it's really harmful. It's harmful for our mental health, our physical health. And so I really want to be an advocate for matrescence as I start to really get into it. And I want to become an expert. I really want to be this guide to help women who are going to be pregnant, who are pregnant. I don't even care if you have kids from like, and your kids are like in their teens or already graduating high school or maybe in college, because you can have unresolved emotions and traumas from going through the matrescence journey, but never understanding what you were going through. And so you never deal with it. And so you're always felt like something's wrong or something was wrong with you or you didn't do a good job, and it has nothing to do with any of that. So um I think we need to start to create the change that society needs to value women as we become, like the women we become when we step into motherhood roles through our matrescence journey. um and this emotional roller coaster for me was super intense. you know um Some days I was super excited. Some days I was super overwhelmed, with a lot of fear, with a lot of doubt. For women over the age of 35, there's a lot of more things that the doctors make you like. They really push into you about your risks because you're a geriatric pregnancy. And then it was just like a lot, a lot to deal with. My own personal fears, so much comes up emotionally that pregnancy will trigger your relationships with your parents, your relationships with, their parents, and things that, like, their matrescence journey starts to get triggered when they learn that they're going to become grandparents and great grandparents. And it all kind of like escalates and comes back to you. And so then, you're felt like overwhelmed, like you don't, like you're like, what the hell is going on? And then it gets intensified because you really are going through this transformation of like your body's changing and your mind's changing. Like, I remember I had to lose a lot of weight so that I could be in the best shape I could while I was trying to get pregnant, because I knew weight management was going to be one of my big things, because it's one of the things that triggered my heart conditions. And so I had lost all this weight. I was feeling good. I was like, yo, I haven't looked this good since I was like in my 30s, like early 30s, late 20s. I was feeling good. And then I got pregnant, and then like this feeling of like, man, all that hard work's about to go to waste. I'm about to gain all this weight. And you hear about these people that can never lose their body weight. And I struggled for decades trying to figure out how to lose weight. And I tried everything. I tried all these diets. Nothing ever worked. And then finally, I understood what I was doing wrong. And so I was like, but what if it doesn't work afterwards? And then all these feelings of like, am I going to like not be happy in my pregnancy because I'm not going to be like happy with the change of my body? But lo and behold, I love being pregnant. I love sporting that belly. The tighter the clothes, the better. I love being in bikini, letting it out. I was like, man, this is like the best. Like, it was like having like an intentional beer gut. But like, I was like, is this what guys feel like when they be like out there without their shirts, looking like they're, I was like, you could tell they're super confident about their big belly. And I'd be like, but how? It don't, like, that looks gross. But then I got the beer belly and I was like, yo, I look sexy. I feel sexy. I look sexy. I am planting this belly everywhere. I was like, this is probably what these dudes be feeling like. I get you now. But for me, I leaned into prenatal yoga and mindfulness. Like, all my practice, everything that I had learned from 2012 until that very moment, and all throughout my pregnancy, it's really what helped me find the like the grounding that I needed. Like, when I was like all over the place, I would be like, "Whew, okay, let's breathe. Let's do some yoga. Let's come back to ourselves. You are going to be okay." We cannot worry and stress ourselves, because stress is going to take us right back where we don't want to. I already was very mindful of my poor stress management, which got me the two heart conditions. So I was like, I cannot afford that. We have somebody else to take care of now. And your responsibility is to stay stress free. We cannot worry about the things that we cannot control. The only thing we can control is our breath and our thoughts. And so it really helped me connect with my changing body. It helped me connect to the pregnancy. It really helped me like deal with all this negative emotions that were just like, this huge roller coaster whirlwind of emotions. So some things, sorry, I keep looking because I'm just making sure that my son's not waking up because I put the sound down so you can't hear the music that's playing for him so that he sleeps good. Um, so I wrote down some notes. So here's my tips that helped me um, embrace my matrescence journey that may help you. Now, again, everybody's just like pregnancy and motherhood's journey, everybody's different. Like, even if you're multiple pregnancies, like you had one, you had another one, you had another one, every single pregnancy and that journey of motherhood is always different. And the matrescence is not something that like you start once and then you keep going. It actually goes, you start a new matrescence journey with each pregnancy. And nobody's is the same. A lot of things play into factor. Your age, your religion, your background, you know, your family situation, where you were raised. Like there's, your experiences. All those things play factors, and so um, no two matrescence journeys are the same. But it's not about that part. It's about sharing the language that some people might be experiencing internally, but never understood how to put it in words. And this sharing bringing more awareness to the matrescence journey because it is, I find most of the stuff that I'm learning and reading about is more in the UK. In the US, ain't nobody know about this. Like everybody that I've talked to, be like, what? What is this word? I've never heard of it. And so we need to kind of raise the game. If you're out there and you're like studying to become a psychologist or looking for something to do research on, do some research on matrescence because it still hasn't been widely researched either. And I think it's really, really needed. So, as soon as I make my first million, I'm going to be donating to research on matrescence because that's how much I believe people need to like learn about it because it just makes you it's just, I don't know, it's hard to explain to you until you really start to learn what matrescence is. And I really want to start diving deeper into it because then you'll feel like, aha, like I'm not crazy. I'm not a bad person. I was not a bad mom having all these thoughts. Like this shit was matrescence. And you just feel heard and seen and just so many beautiful like emotions will transpire when you really start to get into it. So incorporating gentle yoga poses. I go through a lot of them in like my YouTube channel. I've done some blogs about them and really poses that create this calming of the body and the mind. Cat cow's a really good one. Child's pose is like one of my favorite. Butterfly pose, um, meditation and breathing, deep breathing exercises. All good for your pregnancy, all good for labor prep, and they're beautiful for regulating emotions and dealing with stress and connecting with your mind and your body. And it reduces anxiety. So there's a list. There's the list actually goes way more. And if you're really interested, I actually have a quick anxiety relief yoga pose guide that you can get for free. My gift to you. If you're really looking for something that goes more in depth, I give you a checklist of like my top ones. I break down how each one's done. And then I'm going to be launching a 7 or 9 day challenge that you can actually get if you want to take it like a step further. Positive affirmations, where your mind goes, your body goes. So, creating a list of positive affirmations and repeating them daily. Phrases like, I am capable and strong. I embrace this journey with love. I am becoming the best version of myself. Can be super powerful. I teach this a lot in my stand up paddleboard because it's more about taking their fears and changing that mindset to get them ready and giving them small wins so that they're mentally, because all things are almost always mental, like in surgery, not in surgery, but in cancer. Like when I was a nurse, I had this, one of my favorite doctors, Dr. Garrett would always say, cancer diagnosis is 20% physical, 80% mental. And it's so true. Like, I was like, that don't make no sense, Dr. Garrett, when I first started. Because when I started, I didn't really know too much about surgical or oncology. I learned a lot of it in my 12, 13 years that I spent in the practice. And I was like, oh my God, she was totally right. I would see some of the people have like the worst prognosis, but they had like the best attitude. They're like cancer's already like done. Like they were envisioning what they were going to do in 10 years, 20 years. And they would like seriously have the best results. And then you would have these people that are like, dude, it's not that big of a deal. But they would take the news so bad and literally like they would be gone like in 6 months. And I was like, what happened? Like they had really good diagnosis. And they're like, dude, they just mentally in their mind, they had like a death sentence. And so, you know, that, so take that for whatever you want to take it for, and know that what you have inside here is so much more stronger, and writing it down, seeing it, saying it out loud, all of those things are just reinforcing all of that goodness. So it's not just a matter about thinking it. You also have to write it down. You have to visually see it. We are visual learners. Humans are always, we think in pictures. So seeing it, drawing it, doing whatever, saying it out loud, even if you don't believe it, fake it until you make it, until, you get to that point where you're just saying it and you are believing it or you're feeling it, either whichever one comes first. Self-care routines, setting aside times for activities that actually you like that help you relax, whether it's taking that warm bath, going out for that walk. For me, it was crafting. I really got into crafting, making cards, doing stuff like that. Um, and learning. I actually started doing like a lot more online courses and stuff like that. Like and I really got into like um, researching with pregnancy. Like for me, the more I know, the more I felt like in control, and it helped me kind of just resolve this fear of the unknown. And I still knew that the unknown was there. It was just that I had like plan A through Z. Like I was mentally prepared for all of it. And I kind of knew what I wanted to do with each one. Community is a big thing, joining a supportive community group. I have my own thoughts about it. Being very selective though of the types of groups, especially if you're going to join an online group, because sometimes they can be more of like, I don't want to say a bitch fest, but like it's just this forum of where people are just it. It almost feels like it's more complaining, and it didn't. I didn't like it. It was some of them were like heartbreaking because it was just um, a lot of loss, a lot of struggles, and sometimes they're not facilitated well, in my opinion, where it's just like this open forum that's not really supportive. Nobody's in there giving like good support or tips. It's just this free all for people to like chime in, complain, or, ask questions. I'm having this problem. I'm having this problem. You can find some pretty good ones where like the group of people is a little bit different. And then you can find those ones that are like, for me, I'm an empath, and it was like just draining, and it added to my anxiety. And then my added like kind of nuance was that I decided, with the permission of my husband, because he supported it, that we weren't going to tell anybody until we were at the end of our second trimester. Mostly because of my medical background, I knew my risks. I knew because I was 40, I was at high risk. I had two heart conditions. It was the first time I had ever been pregnant. I had like a lot of other medical conditions that compounded the risk. And I just didn't want to have to go through the emotional like roller coaster of telling people and then having to go back and tell them if the pregnancy didn't survive. So it was my choice. It did leave me very lonely, which was why I reached out and really tried to find an online group. I never found one that really um, made me feel supported. So I've created the Empowered Mama Collective, which is my um, support group, but it's off of social media. It's a private member area um, forum that I host offline. Like when I say offline, meaning off Facebook, off Instagram. Just because sometimes I felt like that was more emotionally damaging to my mental health, seeing just pictures and videos of all these people having like this perfect pregnancy and um especially postpartum, and then always making me feel self-conscious because I wasn't having the same experience, and then later on learning that most people don't have the experience that people are commonly posting on Instagram. It's just that we're too ashamed to talk about it or to post about it, so it's not commonly like seen as the norm, if that makes sense. So um professional help, uh do not hesitate asking for professional help. Therapists, counselors, wellness coaches. There's so many out there. For me, it was a little bit complicated because the military, we're on a much smaller island. We were restricted with like travel because of COVID. We were short staffed with medical support. A lot of people were dealing with a lot of mental health struggles due to this whole COVID and being isolated. And because it was a military situation, the military personnel took priority. And so families kind of were on wait list. And so it was a little bit harder to get that level of support. But I hired a doula because I wanted to make sure that I didn't know what to expect, but I knew that I wanted to have somebody there to be my advocate in case I lost my voice or was unable to communicate what I wanted, and to support my husband just in case. Um, and so, yeah, I just, this modern society's prioritization of mothers is not where it should be, in my opinion. And I feel like it's causing unnecessary suffering, both prenatally and postpartum. Um, and I think that people are getting forced to feel like we're Yeah, forced to feel like they're suffering from postpartum depression because they're having these thoughts, but then don't actually qualify to be diagnosed as pre or postpartum depression, and then are just kind of left to feel what? Like we're awful people, we're bad moms, because we're not clinically diagnosable as being depressed, which again, it's not a bad thing, but because there's this little knowledge of this word matrescence and this understanding that those feelings are actually normal and it's not depression. um in some cases, it's just leaving a lot of people with negative thoughts about themselves. Um, and it's just the system is lacking, and it's leaving people feeling isolated and inadequate in their motherhood, as women or people. Because some people are mothers, but they don't identify as women, so they're parents. And wherever you identify yourself, the struggle is real for everybody, because it's not, there are certain things that are associated specifically with women in terms of the hormone changes, the hormone development that happens during pregnancy, the actual transformation that the brain makes when you start to become pregnant. Like it actually changes structure Um, and that all adds to how we feel, what we think, and stuff like that. And so, but there's also the psychological, the mind, the mental transition that we go through, whether you're female, male, in parenthood, but again, focusing on mothers, because it's, as women, we're still underserved in a lot of areas. And I think that we just need to be better. We need to be braver about talking about our own experiences and supportive to each other. Um, and I think we need to just support societal's need to catch up and support research so that we can start getting more like I heard this podcast today that they were like, if men were the ones who gave birth, like matrescence would actually be like a PhD you could get. Like, if it was a man problem, but because it's a woman and we're like underserved and we still lack the voice in certain places for like research and things like that. It's still not really a widely known um, thing. And to be honest, it was just really discovered, the word matrescence and like the beginning research, like in the 70s. And so we still have a long way to go to fully understand what matrescence is, but know that you are not alone, that your thoughts do not make you a bad person or a bad mom, that this is a journey and it's a transition and it's about acknowledging them and then embracing the journey and finding your own way to like kind of get past these hurdles and figuring out where you can get the support, whether it's professionally or something that you can DIY yourself. Um, and so, yeah, just starting to create this value, this support for this incredible transformation that is known as motherhood that I have gone through and completely now like underestimated women. Like I already knew women were awesome because I was, you know, super mind blown of the amazingness of women when I was a nurse in that surgical practice because it was primarily breast cancer clinic. And when I became a mom myself, I was like, wow, like women are really superheroes. Like, I don't know, like, I had so much more respect for my mom. I was like, I don't know how you did it, mom. Three kids. I think she was 26 when she had the third one, and we weren't that far apart. So it would have been like a 1 year old, a 2 year old, a 6 year old, and I think like a 10-year old at one point. I was like, how did you do that, mom? Like, I'm struggling with one. I can't even imagine having more. Um, and so yeah, you know, it's been a beautiful journey, but it's not been without its struggles. And to know that there's a reason for some of the things that I'm thinking and going through is really comforting. And comforting when I speak to moms or women or parents. Um, and they privately disclose the things that they're not comfortable talking about out loud. And I was like, yo, I had the same feeling, or mine was worse. I actually had this. And then we have this conversation, and then it's just like this feeling of like breath, of just feeling like, I wish I would have known this, or I wish we would have talked sooner, or that kind of stuff. So I see my son waking up. I want to thank you for joining me on this really personal conversation of my own paddle forward of navigating, the currents of motherhood. Remember that it's okay to have the wide emotions, but remember that you need to seek support. It's okay to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. If you've really enjoyed this episode, I would highly recommend that you please subscribe. If you really liked it, I would love it if you would leave a comment. I'd love to connect with you on social at Anacani Walters. I'm at Anacani Walters on everything: YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything, everything, everything. Um, And let me know if you have any ideas or suggestions for future episodes. And I just really want to create this community to uplift you. If you're interested in my private member area, definitely check out my website. And you got this. I see you. You're doing an amazing job. You are doing the best you can, and that is enough. Inhale the peace, exhale the chaos, and I will keep paddling forward. And I will catch you in the next episode. Ciao.